Patient is a 65-year-old female presented with a presenting complaint, vertigo and swaying towards the right side while walking of from 12:30 p.m. yesterday onwards. So here two presenting complaints. One is vertigo. Vertigo is and swaying towards the right side. That shows imbalance or ataxia involving the right side. So ataxia and vertigo common and with a sudden onset, more of acute onset. So it can be some cerebellar involvement. One cause.
Cerebellar involvement will produce vertigo.
Vertigo
or
and
only swaying.
And swaying. Both.
Vertigo also, eh?
Vertigo.
What is vertigo? What's vertigo?
Vertigo is feeling of rotatory movement.
What is pseudo vertigo? When the patient says, I have got dizziness, I am about to fall, but the feeling of rotation is not there, it's a pseudo vertigo. But patient's complaint may be same in both conditions. Both situations they say, I am dizzy, I am dizzy. So what is the basic difference between central and peripheral vertigo?
Peripheral vertigo, usually positional variations will be there. Changing the patient's position, like turning to sides or getting up from sitting position, all those things. Or it can be associated with the tinnitus also in peripheral vertigo, and it is a demonstrable vertigo. We can elicit by different manners. We can elicit the peripheral vertigo, and it is ill sustained. The central vertigo is sustained. Other central features will be associated, like cerebellar features or any vestibular involvement. That features is
central vertigo is usually sudden or gradual even. Peripheral is always sudden.
Okay.
Central vertigo, the intensity of symptoms is not that bad, but it is the peripheral vertigo group of patients who say, I will fall, I will fall.
Okay.
When you elicit nystagmus, central vertigo, it is persistent and it may be vertical or horizontal. But peripheral vertigo is transient nystagmus when you change the position, but it does not last long. And when you change the position, the peripheral vertigo keeps on increasing. Other neurological signs are common with central but not with peripheral, but tinnitus and deafness are part of peripheral vertigo. Okay. So whenever you have vertigo, you have to differentiate between the two.
Okay.
Swaying to right side, what are the possibilities?
Swaying to right side. One is weakness of the right lower. Okay. Then imbalance due to ataxia.
Right.
Ataxia, it can be both sensory or cerebellar.
The patient is swaying to right side while sitting. What does it make out of that?
While sitting means truncal ataxia.
Yes. So truncal ataxia localizes to what? Which part of the cerebellum?
Cerebellum, truncal ataxia, vermis.
Vermis, central part.
Central part.
Yes. So this patient had the following problems.
The patient also had a history of vomiting present, history of headache present, and history of difficulty in swallowing present, and a history of nasal regurgitation, hoarseness of voice present, no history of blurring of vision, no history of weakness, no history of loss of consciousness, altered sensory or seizures. Sir, history of vomiting with any neurological features, sudden onset of vomiting plus neurological features, involves any raised ICT, indicates one thing. That is one possibility. With the headache and vomiting, so raised ICT is one possibility. Then history of difficulty in swallowing with nasal regurgitation indicates lower cranial palsy, 9-10 palsy can be associated.
How is 9 involved?
Sir?
Is 9 involved in nasal regurgitation or only 10?
Sir, difficulty in swallowing they have given, so both will be
Okay.
involved.
In nasal regurgitation, which is nerve you postulate?
Nasal regurgitation, vagus, 10th nerve.
10th nerve. Where is the center for vomiting situated?
Chemoreceptor triggers on medulla.
In medulla.
Our medulla.
So can lesion there produce vomiting?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What about hoarseness voice?
Hoarseness of voice. That is due to the sympathetic recurrent laryngitis.
Has it got anything to do with vagus nerve?
Vagus.
The branch recurrent laryngeal nerve can produce hoarseness voice.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Recurrent laryngeal nerve.
Past history.
Past history, it is a patient has type 2 diabetes mellitus on Ayurvedic medications and systemic hypertension on amlodipine 5 mg BD. No history of any TIA also. Okay, sir. On examination, patient is conscious oriented, higher mental functions, speech, hoarseness plus, nasal tongue of voice plus, ptosis present right side. So nystagmus present towards the right, out of proportion to the severity of the vertigo. Okay. The nasal tongue of voice present, palatal movement reduced on the right side, uvula deviated to the left side. Sir, so hoarseness present right recurrent laryngeal palsy, then ptosis on the right side. Didn't mention anything about it can be due to secondary to Horner syndrome.
Okay.
Then
So where do you solution?
medulla, sir, because sympathetics are involved. Then nystagmus towards the right, out of proportion severity, that shows that nystagmus is central origin. Then nasal tongue of voice and palatal movement reduced. So right palatal palsy is also there. So
Okay.
right.
What is nystagmus?
Nystagmus is the involuntary movement of the one of the involuntary movement in the gaze related, which having a fast component and a slow component. And
So it's an involuntary, rhythmical, oscillatory movements of the eyeball when eyes are fixed on an object. So, what are the different types of nystagmus?
Different types of classifications are peripheral nystagmus, central nystagmus, then gaze, vertical nystagmus, horizontal nystagmus, torsional nystagmus, upbeating, downbeating nystagmus, pendular nystagmus.
How do you grade nystagmus? When you look to one side, when you look straight ahead, or when you turn to the normal side. So it can be grade 1, 2, 3.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So what is meant by pendular nystagmus?
Pendular nystagmus means it is there is no slow component, fast component like that. It do not fix in the primary position. It will oscillate.
Causes of that?
Causes medullary lesions. Then
commonly it occurs in children
lesions.
When they become blind before the fixation of the eye take place.
Okay.
So there are different types of jet nystagmus, and there can be gaze devoked nystagmus. One important variety is called dissociated nystagmus. What is that?
Dissociated nystagmus means the uh, one eye will not have any nystagmus, or it will show in different gaze.
That's
The
good.
other eye will only one single eye there will be nystagmus.
Okay. Coming to the examination of motor system, the findings.
So motor system, bulk is normal, upper limb or lower limb, right side there will be hypotonia. Then
So, can you tell me the differential diagnosis for hypotonia?
hypotonia, it is a acute spinal shock state,
Yes,
any CVA. Then LMN lesions,
right?
cerebellar involvement.
Yes.
Then
Name one extrapyramidal involvement producing hypotonia. Hypotonia where the lesion is situated in the extrapyramidal system.
extrapyramidal with hypotonia, multisystem atrophy.
Chorea.
Okay.
Okay, carry on.
Then power, it is grade 4/5, all the movements in the left upper limb and right, sir.
Yes.
Sir, they're both given us left, sir.
One is right. Okay.
First one might be right. Okay, sir.
Okay.
Reflexes is biceps, triceps, supinator, knee and ankle, normal bilaterally. Plantar is right is extensor and left is flexor. Inference. Sir, here according to the history and examination findings, the right-sided cerebellum is involved, sir. Cerebellum or cerebellar peduncle is involved. Inferior cerebellar peduncle is involved. 9th, 10th nerve is involved. Right sympathetic tract is involved. Then so lateral medullary syndrome.
In lateral medullary syndrome, will you get upgoing plantar?
Upgoing plantar is not a common feature, sir, but
Common feature, okay.
Not a common feature, but can be associated. If it extends down, it can involve the pyramidal tract.
Pyramidal tract, okay. So, is it an intrinsic brainstem disease or extrinsic brainstem disease?
Intrinsic brainstem disease.
So, how will you differentiate between the two? You already said there is a Horner syndrome.
Horner syndrome, sympathetic involvement.
Other point is towards intrinsic brainstem will be, one is internuclear ophthalmoplegia. Other one will be your dissociated sensory loss over the face.
Okay, sir.
Still another one will be your vertical nystagmus.
Okay, sir.
So these are the important points to differentiate intrinsic versus extrinsic brainstem disease.
Okay.
So intention tremor right side indicates what?
Cerebellar involvement.
Okay. So we have so many findings in relation to right side cerebellum. Sensory system examination was normal.
Okay, sir.
What's your impression from these train findings?
Sir?
What's your impression? Final diagnosis?
Final diagnosis is, sir, still I go with the right lateral medullary syndrome with the small extension of the lesion to the lower side.
There was also truncal ataxia, no?
Truncal ataxia with vermis.
So there may be some extension here and there.
Okay, sir.
So how will you distinguish anterior territory stroke from posterior territory stroke? Posterior circulation stroke. What are the important points to differentiate from anterior circulatory strokes?
Anterior circulation usually present with hemiplegia or hemisensory loss with the speech involvement, aphasia, with or without a speech involvement, aphasia, and if it is involving the cortical, it can involve the cortical functions. If it is involved, it is under circulation stroke. Then posterior circulation mainly with cerebellar and vestibular-basilar insufficiency, cerebellar, uh, uh, vertigo, ataxia, and stroke with the cranial nerve involvement. Other associated cranial nerve involvements will be there in the posterior circulation.
So in the presentation, vomiting, vertigo are important features.
Okay.
Diplopia and other lower cranial nerve involvement is a characteristic for
Posterior.
post-circulatory stroke. Cross hemiplegias, dissociated sensory loss, bilateral signs are again features of posterior cranial fossa. Cerebellar involvement also favors. If there are involvement of occipital lobe, again goes for
Posterior.
posterior circulatory stroke. So quite differences are there between the two. So it's a brainstem. So we have already discussed how to distinguish between extrinsic and intrinsic. Already we have said extrinsic, successive cranial nerves will be involved. Early involvement of acoustic neuroma and all points towards extrinsic lesion compressing.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So intrinsic are quite significant. We already mentioned important points of intrinsic. No. So what are the components of Horner syndrome?
Sir, ptosis, meiosis, anhydrosis, enophthalmos, and loss of ciliospinal reflex.
What is ciliospinal reflex?
While pinching the skin of the neck, there will be dilatation of the pupil of the same side.
So you may have different manifestation. This patient had ptosis. So how to distinguish ptosis of Horner's from ptosis of third nerve palsy?
The third nerve palsy patient cannot lift the eyelid. Here, patient can lift the eyelid when we ask the patient to do so. It can, but it will be ill-sustained lifting, because to maintain the sustain the lift eyelid in open position, we need that Muller muscle.
So complete ptosis is a feature of third nerve.
Third nerve palsy.
Partial ptosis is a feature of Horner syndrome.
Yes,
Any other point? If the pupil is dilated,
it is a third nerve involvement.
Oh.
It's here. Meiosis.
If you find squint,
Is third nerve involvement.
if the patient complains of diplopia,
Diplopia also third nerve involvement.
so how do you localize Horner syndrome?
Horner can be complete Horner or partial Horner, depends on that. If it is a partial Horner, the anhydrosis will be absent. So in that case, we can localize the branches which goes to the along with the internal carotid artery branches, like so meningioma, pituitary causes, pituitary adenomas, that kind of cause. Then complete Horner can be there in central, and it can be locations in the neck also. So if there is a involvement of, if it is involving the brainstem, we will get other complete Horner with other brainstem features like lateral medullary or lateral pontine features will be there, along with the cerebral. If it is in the complete Horner, with those features will be there if it is in the brainstem. And complete Horner without that features, we can localize in the neck, like lymphadenopathies, apical lung tumor, those kind of things.
So there are different orders, no? First order, second
First
order,
order,
third order. What you said is correct. First order lesions are lesions
from
of the
hypothalamus.
sympathetic tract, brainstem, or cervicothoracic spinal cord as a part of what you said is lateral medullary syndrome. So presentation will be in relation to the symptoms of medulla or brainstem, abnormal eye movements, ataxia, dissociative sensory loss, hoarseness, dysphagia, and so on. Second order neurons is called as preganglionic. They occur with trauma or surgery of spinal cord, thoracic outlet, apex of the lungs, like in patients with Pancoast tumor, and they may have axillary arm pain, may be present. Third order is postganglionic, where, as you said, internal carotid artery. So you may get sudden dissection, thrombosis, cavernous sinus involvement, maybe aneurysm in the cavernous sinus, and so on. First and second order, as you correctly said, produces anhydrosis. The sympathetic fibers responsible for facial sweating and vasodilatation branch off at the superior cervical ganglion along the external carotid artery and its branches. The remainder of the oculosympathetic pathway contains few pseudomotor fibers which supply very small tip of the skin along the forehead. Thus, anhydrosis is not a prominent feature of third order lesions. That's how you can localize. So, why do you want to do standardize like this, first order, second order, third order? What is the purpose?
Because we can localize the pathologies different.
Localize. And the site of the pathology will also tell the possible etiology. So etiological diagnosis will be helped by. So these patients come soon after the incidents. So what will you do next?
Sir, we can go with, since it is a posterior circulation, we have to do an MRI brain.
Yes, done. Okay.
And then we have to rule out MR angiogram also in this case, because it is a posterior circulation. We have to rule out the thrombosis extending into vertebral or.
So this was a complete occlusion of vertebral artery in this case.
Okay, sir.
And it was basically hypoplastic artery on which thrombosis had taken place.
Okay. Then posterior circulation, thrombectomy is rarely done. It's not advised thrombectomy. Usually done with anterior circulation stocks. But nowadays some centers have started doing thrombectomy in posterior circulation also, sir.
Yes.
So
anything else can you offer?
Then otherwise, thrombolysis is, if there is a complete occlusion of the thrombus, then thrombolysis is less helpful, but still we can go with after getting the.
So what are the indications? Inclusion criteria.
Sir, in this case or general?
In general.
In general, it is a ischemic stroke. Any ischemic stroke involved with a demonstrable, that we will look with that NIH scoring system with a score. If it is more than 5, that kind of weakness is there and presented within the window period of 3 hours.
No, 4.5 hours.
4.5 hours we can 4.5 hours we can, then we have to rule out any recent bleed, any recent surgeries.
That's exclusion criteria.
Exclusions.
Contraindications. So many things are there in the exclusion criteria. Basically, what all things?
Exclusion criteria: any history of previous intracranial hemorrhage, any recent surgery, major surgeries, any bleeding manifestations, peptic ulcer disease with active bleeding, and recent lumbar puncture is also one contraindication. Then.
So basically, you have to be very careful about the blood pressure. If it's very, very high, you have to bring it down with labetalol and then give the treatment. Any bleeding anywhere is a problem. So exclusion criteria is very, very important. What are the common drugs used?
Streptokinase and tenecteplase.
Altiplase,
Altiplase and
tenecteplase.
tenecteplase. See, this one.
And are you expecting any complications?
Yes, sir. Bleeding. Commonest complication is bleeding. Intracranial bleed.
So it can be systemic bleeding also. It will always be intracerebral bleed. And once you have started the treatment, you cannot keep on puncturing in different places. You be careful about that. If you already done a central line puncture like a subclavian, then of course this drug cannot be given.
Okay.
Is there any antidote for bleeding if at all takes place?
Vitamin K.
So basically we have discussed today a case of CVA affecting the posterior circulation, and very classical presentation in a senior person is coming with acute ataxia sharply at 12:30 timing and characterized by classical vertigo and swaying, and we have got all these findings. So we can easily localize this case. 10th nerve is the center point, so obviously it is the medulla, and it affects the cerebellum also. Cerebellum in medulla is related to the inferior cerebellar peduncle, so cerebellar signs are expected. But here, in addition, even on sitting position, she was having, so we are taken aback by that. So we posted possibly cerebellum is also affected up to the midline, producing this problem. And she had some risk factors also for this illness, and this is to be managed just like any other posterior circulatory strokes. Any question?
No, sir.
No, if so, we will call today. Thank you.